I'm not around on this day, so I have left you some work and explanation on how to run the class for today. Now, I know that you can start off with your presentation and so on, but I would like to go on with chapter 12 where we have left it. And today we'll focus on chapter 12 first. And the presentation we can do it on the last day, on Thursday. Alright. Now let's discuss on this one here. Okay, now we have different glands, endocrine glands, and actually for chapter 12, right, I have combined it with chapter 13, compile them together so that you can actually relate them and answer them carefully later. Now let's look at pancreas right now. How really pancreas work? Now how really pancreas work is under chapter 13 actually, and I've combined here so that you can relate when you learn. Now here's a close-up of pancreas. Now as you can see, pancreas is over here. This is the pancreas. Now pancreas has certain segments, very funny one. It has a head, it has a body, and also has a tail actually. And basically for a normal human being to have, what is the blood glucose level is between 75 to 110, and that also when you take in about 100 ml of blood and you check the blood glucose level. So that is supposed to be a normal amount. Okay, and how does the pancreas actually functions and what are inside it? Now pancreas is made up of few cells actually. We have alpha cells. This is called alpha, and alpha cell secretes a hormone which is called glucagon. We have beta cells. Beta cells secretes two different hormones, and the major one is insulin. I'm not going to touch about B cells and F cells because they are not inside the syllabus, and I will only explain them in the last part where as a part of your information. Okay, let's look at the alpha and beta cells which secretes glucagon and insulin respectively. Now blood glucose regulation for a normal human being, how it occurs. Okay, now look at a stimulus right now, this stimulus. Now what happens when you eat some carbohydrate rich food? Now when you eat a carbohydrate rich food, after digestion has occurred and in the midst of digestion, right, so what happened here is that the carbohydrate will be broken down into glucose, and obviously when there's a glucose there inside your body, the glucose is actually present in your blood system. Okay, now what happens here is that the pancreas will however detect the increase in the blood glucose. Okay, the increase in the blood glucose level is detected by the pancreas. And which part of the pancreas will detect this? The beta cells. Now beta cells will actually detect the presence of the blood glucose level which is in increased state and trigger the productions of insulin. Insulin is a hormone which will actually decrease the blood glucose level. So once insulin is released into the blood system. So what insulin will do is that insulin will instruct the following actions here and here. Now the first action is it will actually ask the body cells to take up more glucose, which means some body cells will be in the state of deficiency of glucose. That means there's not enough glucose. So it will channel the bloods into the body cells where the glucose can be transferred. Second thing, it will instruct liver to take up glucose and store it temporarily as glycogen. Glycogen is a thick meat, like a chunk of glucose which is like compressed and stored temporarily inside the liver. So insulin does its functions to decrease the blood glucose level, but how it does it? First thing, it instructs the body cells to take up more glucose, and it instructs the liver to keep it or store it temporarily in the form of glycogen. Okay, in this way, as you can see in the blood system, blood capillaries, all the glucose, maybe most heavy portions, has been removed. It has been removed to liver and body cells. So the blood glucose level will actually drop to a set point, which means to a normal point where it comes back to normal here. Okay. on the contrary, let's say if you have a lower blood glucose level, which means that when there's a stimulus of such, there's a tendency for you to actually skip a meal. This will cause a low blood glucose level. That means your blood will not have sufficient amount of glucose. So again, it is detected by the alpha cells inside the pancreas, alpha cells. And alpha cells will release a hormone which is called glucagon. Now, glucagon will try to increase the level of blood glucose inside the blood. How it does? Just one way. It will instruct the liver. Just now we stored a glycogen, right, in the form of glycogen. So it will instruct the liver to break down the glycogen to glucose, and the glucose can be put back into the blood. So blood glucose level will increase to a normal point and back to normal homeostasis. So this process is called homeostasis of blood glucose level. Okay. So this is another diagram for that. Okay, now when we are talking about blood glucose level, we also have to talk about the main important issue here, which is called diabetes. Diabetes mellitus. Now, diabetes mellitus can happen in many ways actually, and this is mainly due to because the defects in the productions, release and reception of insulin by target cells. What it means here that sometimes pancreas fail to produce insulin or release insulin, or maybe sometimes the body cells cannot receive the insulin. There is fault on many sides. Now, in the diabetes case, blood glucose will be extremely high and it will fluctuate greatly after a meal actually, you can see. Okay, and also diabetes can cause a certain tubule which is called proximal convoluted tubule, which you will learn later, to not reabsorb all the glucose into the kidney bag, which means like sometimes, right, when the water gushes out to your urinary bladder to be filtered by kidney, and then when it goes to your urinary bladder, right, glucose also will pass through. Now what the tubule will do is the proximal convoluted tubule, it is very smart. Its function is to absorb all the glucose from the urine to produce only urine. But however, in a diabetes case, the proximal convoluted tubule will fail to function. So, which means the glucose will retain in the urine, and this is how the glucose is actually excreted in the urine. You can find the glucose in the urine. And how to manage diabetes? Some people manage it through insulin injections or tablets to lower down blood glucose level, and of course to manage the diets as well. Okay, next. Now, we do have different types of diabetes. The first type is called diabetes 1, type 1. So if you look at the diagram here, the healthy part over here, so this is the pancreas. The pancreas will actually release insulin, and the insulin has to move through the blood into the targeted cells like here. Okay, that means the first thing is the pancreas is able to produce insulin, and the insulin is able to travel, and the insulin is also able to go to the targeted body cells. Okay, but however for type 1 diabetes is a very special case. Your immune cells in your body attacks your own body cells, which means the immune cells will tend to destroy the beta cells in the pancreas. Now remember, beta cells actually produce insulin. If the beta cells is destroyed at the first place by your own immune cells, so pancreas cannot produce insulin. So when there's no insulin, more glucose will be accumulated in the blood. So this is the type 1 diabetes, whereby The beta cells are destroyed by the immune cells, so this causes type 1 diabetes. Next one is the type 2 diabetes. Now, type 2 diabetes is mostly due to obesity, genetic factor, or any other preliminary factors that leads to insulin resistance. Now, as you can see, let's say this is the pancreas. Now, pancreas will actually secrete the insulin. Now, sufficient insulin is secreted into the bloodstream. Okay, that means the pancreas can produce the insulin and can secrete it. All right, so this is the insulin, and this is the blood glucose level here inside the bloodstream over here. Okay, everything is going on fine except for the muscles over here. Now remember, there was a two-way of reducing the blood glucose level. One is the liver to store the glucose in the form of glycogen, and the other one is the body cells or muscles to use the glucose. What happens here is that type 2 diabetes is related to muscles or body cells that has developed something called insulin resistance. Insulin resistance means it has been developed a resistance toward insulin. Insulin is considered a foreign particle. It is unable to bind to the insulin in order to carry out the action, which is to use up the glucose. So this is called type 2 diabetes. So moving on next. Now both people and animals can also get diabetes. So it's not only actually limited to humans only. Anyone can get it. So are you at the risk? Family history, lack of exercise, unhealthy diet, and overweight can affect that too. So this is a task for you, task number 2, for you to actually do it right now. Okay, based on the diagram here, explain how blood glucose level is regulated by pancreas, which means you have to explain the homeostasis in regulating blood glucose level. So please provide in the form of essay, not in the form of diagram, essay form. Use the diagram to construct your essay. So I will post this task number 2 in the Teams. Don't worry, so you can actually type it out in the comment sections or write it in your science journal book and then provide the snapshot also can.